Hey everybody, John Skiba here from the Consumer Warrior YouTube channel, and in today's video we're going to talk about zombie debt, specifically when you should be scared and when you shouldn't. But if this is your first time here on my YouTube channel, please click subscribe, check on that little bell. That way you'll be notified each and every week when I put out new videos that'll help you deal with your serious debt problem. All right, let's talk about debt, and particularly zombie debt. You may have seen this term thrown around on the internet in different articles. Zombie debt is something that's still kind of this relatively new phenomenon, even though it's been numerous years. But you know, in the old days, how it used to be, if you, let's say you had a credit card, and let's say you couldn't pay it, once it went 6 months with no payments, the debt was then charged off, which is just an internal tax classification by the company where they're writing it off as a loss. It was charged off, and then really, you didn't really hear from them again. You may have gotten a few collection calls, that, something like that, but the debt was typically gone and you didn't really hear from them coming back. In this brave new world of what we call debt buying, that's changed completely. Now, when you fall behind on a credit card, you go 6 months, it gets charged off. Most credit card companies will then sell the debt. They'll package it up in a portfolio of thousands of other accounts, and they sell them to companies called junk debt buyers. These junk debt buyers, their whole purpose in life is they go and they pay pennies on the dollar for these particular accounts, with the idea that they're then going to sue these people and try to get judgment so they can garnish their wages, garnish their bank accounts, and collect on the full balance, not just the amount that they paid. So you can see how that can be really profitable for them, because if they're paying 4 or 5 cents on the dollar, but they're collecting 100 cents on the dollar, that's how they choose to make a living. But all of that, the morality of that aside, zombie debt, what happens is sometimes when the debt buyer buys the debt, they will then hold on to it for a couple of years, and then sometimes they'll even sell it. They'll package it up and sell it to another debt buyer. And maybe they'll do some collections for a period of time, and then they'll package that up and they'll sell that to another debt buyer. And so it just keeps changing hands over and over and over. And so it's possible that you had a card, maybe with Synchrony Bank, it changed hands 4 or 5 times. And you're dealing with all of these different debt collectors and people who are saying that they now own the debt. And so you run into the situation where you're like, how could this possibly be still sticking around? And what they do is there is a time period within what's called the statute of limitations. Like in Arizona, where I practice law, they have 6 years from the time the debt goes into default to actually file a lawsuit. And if they don't do it, they're barred forever. Now you may be thinking, okay, so they're going to try to collect on it for 6 years. It might change hands between these various debt buyers for 6 years, and then they'll, they're outside the statute of limitations, so they'll go away. You would be wrong in this new zombie debt world we live in, because they will even then package up debt that's outside the statute of limitations and sell them to certain junk debt buyers. Now, certain debt buyers, even if it's outside the statute of limitations, they think, look, we can buy this and send letters, because just because it's outside the statute of limitations, they could no longer sue you, but they can reach out to you and ask you to voluntarily pay it. And I have seen it. You would be surprised how many people do. They voluntarily pay the debt or start making payments on it to be able to try to get the debt dealt with. So that's where this zombie debt comes around, is that they're out there buying these old charged off debts that are outside the statute of limitations, and they're still trying to collect on them, even though they can't even file a lawsuit. When they buy debts like that, by the way, the deals that I've seen, some of them are paying less than a cent on the dollar. They may have a deal where they're paying 1/4 cent or 1/2 cent on the dollar of debt to be able to try to send out letters and try to get you to pay on those. So the question is, which ones should you be afraid of and which ones should you not? If the debt is recently new and if it's within the statute of limitations in your particular jurisdiction, again, Arizona, where I practice law, it's 6 years. If it's been less than 6 years since you stopped making payments on that, then it's within the statute and they may actually file a lawsuit against you, and then you need to deal with that. If it's something where it's been more than 6 years and someone's calling you on the phone, you probably don't need to be worried about that as much. One thing you can look at is two areas, I should actually say. Look on your credit report and see if it's actually still on your credit report. But even if it is, it still may be outside the statute of limitations. I'd recommend looking at the communication. If they're sending you written communication that says, hey, do you want to voluntarily pay this? the FDCPA, the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, requires that they put a label on there or some information. Sometimes it's on the back of the document or the letter, and it will actually tell you that that the time to sue you has expired and that they could no longer sue you. So that it's required to put that on there so that you know that, look, apparently the statute of limitations has expired, but if I would have voluntarily paid this, I can. If you get a letter that says that, that's debt that you don't need to be so scared of, because there's not a whole lot they can do. It's likely going to fall off your credit in the near future if it hasn't already, but they're not going to sue you, they're not going to garnish you or anything like that. So hopefully that helps you understand a little bit about what zombie debt is, why it is that these accounts just seem to be lingering around forever. And I tell you, I've seen some true scary horror stories where I've had clients come in and they have debts that are 10, 15 years old, and they're still getting these letters asking them to voluntarily pay it. But it usually just takes a quick visit with me to say, look, it's outside the statute of limitations. It's not on your credit. There's not a lot they can do to you. There's really nothing they can do to you because they can't sue you, and it's not even reporting negatively in your credit report. So hopefully that helps. If you've had an experience with zombie debt, put it down in the comments. I'd like to see how long or how old some of this stuff is that you've been finding yourself dealing with. Put it down in the comments so we can make some comments on it from there. Thanks for watching today.